Have you ever stopped to think about the steel that's all around us? I mean, it's in our cars, our homes, our offices. It's literally the backbone of our world. But right now, behind this everyday metal, there's a huge global economic story playing out. It's a story packed with massive booms, painful busts, and some really high-stakes moves by governments. So let's jump right in and decode what's going on with the steel cycle.
So what you're looking at here, this isn't just a pile of rocks. This is coking coal. And for a steelmaker, especially in a country like India, this stuff is absolutely critical. But here's the catch. It's also a huge part of their costs, and its price swings like crazy on the world stage. It's incredibly volatile. Okay, so if wildly unpredictable costs are one half of the puzzle, what's the other piece? What makes this whole industry feel so up and down all the time? It actually comes down to the very nature of the business itself. Yeah, see, to really get a handle on steel, you just can't think in a straight line. This is not some simple, steady growth story. Nope, it's a commodity, and that means it's on a constant and often pretty dramatic roller coaster. It's all about the cycle.
So what even is a commodity cycle?
Well, at its heart, it's a pretty predictable pattern. Think of it like a heartbeat, a really, really dramatic one. It's what happens when the amount of stuff available globally, like steel, gets totally out of whack with how much people actually want to buy. And that imbalance, it leads to these massive swings in price. And this right here perfectly maps out that steel roller coaster. Let's just walk through it real quick. It always kicks off at point 1. Prices are high, and companies are making a ton of money. That makes everyone feel optimistic, which leads to point 2. They all start investing billions in building new factories. A few years go by, and then bam, point 3. All that new supply finally comes online. You can probably guess what's next, right? Point 4, there's way too much steel and prices just crater. That pain leads to point 5, where some companies go under or shut down plants, which starts to tighten up supply again. And that finally leads us to point 6, where prices start to climb, kicking off the whole crazy cycle all over again. So here's the big takeaway from all this. If you're looking at a steel company's quarterly report and trying to figure out what's going on, you're honestly missing the point. You have to zoom way out. You've got to understand where we are in this bigger, multi-year rhythm to make any sense of it. Okay, so now that we've got this cycle down, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Because how you make steel actually has a huge, huge impact on how a company weathers these ups and downs.
Now, this is super interesting. On the left, you've got the blast furnace method. This is the big one in India. Think massive, super expensive factories that use raw iron ore and that coking coal we talked about. And here's the key. Once you fire one up, it has to run 24/7. It's incredibly costly to stop. Then on the right, you have the electric arc furnace. These are more common in the US. They're basically giant recycling machines that melt down scrap steel. They're way more nimble, cheaper to build, and you can slick them on and off. So what does this mean? It means those blast furnace guys have insane operating leverage. When times are good, they make a killing. But when the cycle turns down, they can get absolutely crushed by their high fixed costs.
Okay, let's follow the money. For one of those big blast furnace producers, you can see that raw materials are by far the lion's share of the cost. You've got iron ore making up about 35%. But then look at that other huge slice of the pie. Coking coal, sitting there at around 30%. And for any steelmaker in India, this is everything. Coking coal is the one single thing they have the least control over. It's the wild card that can literally make or break their entire year. And why is it such a gamble? Well, because India doesn't have much of its own. The country has to import something like 85% of all the coking coal it needs, mostly from places like Australia. This means the whole industry is completely exposed, not just to volatile energy prices, but also to the whims of currency exchange rates. All right, so we've covered the cycle, we've covered the costs, but what about the other side of the equation? Who is actually buying all this steel in India? Let's take a look at the demand engine. Wow, the demand story in India is really dominated by one massive sector: construction and infrastructure. I mean, it eats up a staggering 60% of all the steel produced. So government spending on highways, bridges, railways, that is a massive, massive driver. Then you've got the auto industry, which is another key customer at about 12%. And right now, that auto demand is looking pretty darn good. Just look at these recent numbers. In January 2026, overall vehicle sales, boom, shot up 23% compared to the year before. That's a really strong signal. And it doesn't stop there. Dig a little deeper and you see two-wheeler sales, which are a great pulse check on consumer confidence. They grew by over 26%. And scooters were even hotter, jumping by nearly 37%. So you'd think, okay, with the domestic demand engine just firing on all cylinders like this, the steel industry must be absolutely booming, right? Well, that brings us to the real heart of our story, the central paradox. So here's the puzzle. If demand at home is so strong, why on earth would the Indian steel industry need to be protected? This is where we get to the core of it. The reason India is drawing this protective line in the sand with new import duties. Here's the problem they were facing. Even with all that great local demand, Indian steelmakers were getting squeezed. A tidal wave of cheaper steel was flooding in from other countries, especially China, which has so much excess capacity that they often just dump their surplus on the global market at rock-bottom prices. This was pushing down prices in India and just hammering the profits of local companies.
So the Indian government decided to step in, and what you're looking at here is how they did it. These are the new safeguard duties. Basically, they set a price floor. If certain steel products, like these hot-rolled coils, are imported for less than, say, $675 a ton, they get slapped with an extra tax. And you'll notice which countries keep popping up on that list. China, Vietnam. It's pretty clear who this is aimed at.
And this isn't just some quick, temporary patch, either. They've laid out a whole 3-year plan. The duty starts at 12%, then it slowly steps down over the next couple of years to 11%. The idea is to give the domestic industry a shield, a bit of breathing room to get stronger. Which brings us to our final section. Now that these duties are in place, how do we read the future? What are the potential upsides? What are the big risks? And what should we all be keeping an eye on? So, on the bright side, there are few things that could really give the industry a boost. First, if India's massive infrastructure push keeps going strong, that provides a solid foundation of demand for years. Second, and this is a big one, if China ever gets serious about cutting its own extra steel capacity, that would change the whole global game. And third, the duties themselves should help prop up prices at home, protecting those profit margins. But of course, it's not all smooth sailing. There are some serious storm clouds on the horizon too. China's overcapacity is still the #1 threat. If they keep exporting aggressively, they could just overwhelm these new duties. Then there's our old friend, the wild card. A sudden spike in coking coal prices could wipe out profits overnight. And of course, a big global recession would hit demand for everything, everywhere, and steel would be no exception. So all of this leaves us with a really big question to chew on. Are these new steel duties just a temporary shield for one industry in one country? Or are we actually looking at a blueprint for a whole new era of global trade? An era that's maybe a little more protectionist, where national interests start to clash more and more with global market forces. That's definitely something to think about.